changes. Everything revolves around changes. Used to be friends.
All right, let's go, because you know what I came in to do.
I don't get paid for overtime. I'm here to fight.
Joe and Dubois and so forth, we put them together. We don't shy away from it. We put the fights together, and the best will come through on the particular night. And it's not the end of the world for losers. We go with them. We don't discard guys. We work with them.
Everybody's been talking about it on Twitter, like Frank is trying to par off Joyce. You know, he tried to par off Daniel Dubois on AJ after Daniel got thrashed by Usyk. But Daniel's still young, so he's not going to get the treatment yet. When Tyson Fury became the flavour at Box Nation, shortly after he defeated Derek Chisora for the second time, Frank started talking to Derek very disrespectfully, and when they parted, it wasn't amicable, and he said he'll never work with Derek again. Derek got the stoppage loss on his record against Fury, had a few wins in between that and the loss to David Haye, and Frank thought he was washed up.
I haven't spoken to you about Derek Chisora. He was on the bill from the weekend. We had a long-term association with Derek.
Yeah.
Parted companies recently. Spoke to him the other day. Still had a lot of good words and respect for everyone.
Why shouldn't he?
No, I'm just
why shouldn't he? You've done a
out.
fabulous job for him, you know. I think I got manager of the century for managing him, you know, with the fights that he lost and kept getting him great shots at fights, you know. But I was very disappointed in his last fight for us. He came in really overweight and it was a boring fight, stunk the place out, and I was very unhappy about that. And things going on behind the scenes, so I disassociate myself from it.
Derek went on to become a pay-per-view star at Matchroom on a fight-by-fight basis. So what was it? 7 years removed from Box Nation and Frank Warren. Who calls him up to be a voluntary against Tyson Fury? Frank Warren. Why did he call up Derek? I don't want to hear about all this. Tyson was doing a favour for an old friend. He knew Derek had a certain level of popularity, but it was a safe fight for Tyson Fury, and they went ahead with that. Joyce asked for that fight. He stablemates with Fury on the same promotional outlet that Frank Warren runs. Frank and Tyson Fury, I guess, totally ignored Joyce and went for Derek Chisora. Joe signed a co-promotional deal with Frank Warren 2019 and extended the deal 2021. And Frank said, I'm glad to lock Joe in for a long-term contract. I don't know how long he's got left on that contract or if there's much more fights. I'm assuming with Frank saying what he's saying, urging him to consider retirement, Joe could just walk away. But will he? Frank's going old school, like the Waterfront could have been a contender. This is how promoters used to treat boxers, literally. You know, Frank tried to clean it up, saying, oh, there's still fights out there for him, but he should consider retirement. I wonder how Joe feels about that. His promoter putting it out there rather than telling him personally he should retire. The worst moments of Joe's life as a boxer, to hear that. So basically, if there's fights left on his contract, Frank's basically saying you can walk, I would assume. You can walk. What would Joe do next? If he does have a contract, Frank is obligated to get him fights. But maybe Frank doesn't think that Joe is value. He probably hasn't turned over a profit with Joe. And now he's got to rebuild this 38-year-old heavyweight who's just been chinned. He's not going for it. Frank's always trying to par everybody off on Anthony Joshua. After Daniel lost to Usyk, we should make Joshua Dubois. He's already tried to par Joe off with AJ. Now he's trying to par off ZHANG with AJ. What I'd like to know is why Tyson Fury didn't fight ZHANG rather than Francis Ngannou. You know, instead of trying to par off everybody with Anthony Joshua, why don't you get Fury to take the fights the public want to see? Same old thing. Surely Frank isn't going to call for an AJ Joyce fight, although Eddie shut that down.
Would you look at AJ Joyce?
No.
Why not?
That would be dangerous. Honestly, come on. Like,
dangerous for Joyce.
he shouldn't be boxing. AJ punches as hard as ZHANG, with much more speed.
But it's an all-British heavyweight fight, is it not so?
It's not a right fight to make. You have to protect these guys. It's a car crash, that fight. Car crash.
Watch your back, Daniel Dubois. That's all I can say, watch your back. I don't agree with all the people saying Joe should retire. It's up to Joe. He's a former silver medalist at the Olympics, a former British Commonwealth and European title holder, WBO interim #1 If Joe wants to fight and he can pass his MRIs and his medicals, I got no problem with it. When he can't pass the MRIs and the medicals, then fair enough, it's over. But, you know, imagine boxing from the 1700s, bare knuckle, all the way through to Queensbury rules. Imagine if all the fighters who suffered back-to-back losses, maybe knockout losses like Joe, if they all gave up. We wouldn't have a sport now. Boxing is based on tough guys and women who are resilient. You know, they've got to be prepared to take L's. They've got to endure people laughing at them when their legs go all about the place when they get hit and knocked out. They've got to be tough enough to endure the criticism from the media and the press, the actual physical pain of taking punches and the stress that training puts on their body. It is what it is. And no, it doesn't matter if Joe gets knocked out in his next fight. He's entitled to pursue his dream, to try and be champion, or reclaim his spot as a contender. He's entitled to do so. Now, it wasn't just a physical thing you saw on Saturday. And what nobody has spoke about, you know, these experts in psychology who like to talk about Anthony Joshua's mental status. None of them have spoke about Joe Joyce's psychological breakdown in that ring on Saturday. He was beaten way before the knockout punch landed. The breakdown probably started before he went in the ring, and that's what Steve Bunce is saying. It was probably before he went in the ring. But definitely, when he realized that the fight was going to go the same way as the first one, in the second round, when he took them jabs and wobbled, he snapped. And Joe was one of the people talking about, oh, Joshua, gun shy and all this shit. He was one of them. He was mentally beaten in there. I don't want to say he was scared to throw hard punches, but he looked apprehensive to commit to his punches, knowing that ZHANG would read them and counter him. He bulked up because he was supposed to collapse the pocket, not box from the outside. Doesn't take a genius to work that out. But he wasn't at the races mentally, and ZHANG took advantage of that. He took the rematch way too early, and when he got in the ring, it probably clicked. You know something? All this weight shit that Simon Jordan and that Frank Warren is peddling was the reason I lost, is not the fucking reason.
In terms of Frank Warren's comments about Joe Joyce in the immediate aftermath of that defeat, what did you make of those?
I mean, let's be honest, it was absolute full savage. Like, look, Frank Warren is 72. My old man is 75, right? They sometimes say things, sometimes without thinking, or they just don't care. You have to respect that as well. Like, there's no bullshit. So when that fight finished, in Frank Warren's head, Joe Joyce is done. I've got ZHANG now. That's all that matters to me. Bye, Joe. And you saw that in the interview. I mean, it was a very straightforward interview. Oh, Joe should retire. Nah, I don't think so. Oh, we'll announce ZHANG's fight soon. And I think that didn't sit well with people, especially fighters, because they're like, hang on a minute, you've just binned that geezer off and now you've got this new guy. So he had to come out and kind of deal with that yesterday. But I think Frank Warren's right. I think Joe Joyce should retire. The problem for Frank Warren is Joe Joyce has probably got fights left on his contract for a load of money that Frank Warren don't want to give him because now he doesn't have the value.
I tell you what, you see, apparently, from what we knew, ZHANG didn't have no more promotional ties to Queensbury. But Frank obviously done a deal with ZHANG to get more options on him. And Eddie spelt it out there. Yeah, he don't want to pay Joyce no more. He don't want to do no more rebuilding on Joe Joyce. He's already got to do a rebuilding job on Daniel Dubois. Doesn't need the extra traffic. He's got David Adelaide fighting Fabio Wardley for the British title. Young heavyweights. Queensbury cards haven't been all that. They're going back to the York Hall quite a lot. They don't have the roster. Dennis McCann, one of their top prospects, was given a lot of hometown love in his last scrap. Anthony Yard, hometown advantage, Adrian Beterbiev, cracking fight, took an L. Zach Parker, purse bid, controlled by Queensbury. John Ryder, Matchroom fighter, he went into enemy territory, took the unbeaten Zach Parker apart, won the interim WBO title, and went on to fight Canelo. He came out of the Canelo fight a beaten fighter, thoroughly beaten, but with nothing but credit and admiration. So he still has value. He's the longest serving Matchroom fighter. I believe he's been there 12 years, and he still has value. But let's not get it twisted. Eddie is not the fairy godmother. There might become a time where John is surplus to requirements. Let's not get it twisted. What other option does Frank Warren really have? 38, coming off 2 bad knockout losses. He's got to do rebuilding jobs on Zach, Anthony, Dubois. I don't know all the details, but it looks like Frank is currently in control of the British heavyweight title. He has David the Dillier signed to him, and it looks like he'll have some options on Fabio Wardley. He's got a lot of heavyweights he has to juggle right there, and not all of them can get the same attention. Joe just doesn't really fit into the schedule. Frank is ruthless, but let's not get it twisted. Eddie discarded Michael Hunter, Martin Bacoli, when they was on winning runs. I think Hunter drew with Povetkin, and they got rid of him. Got rid of Bacoli. Surplus to requirements.
Well, you received a lot of criticism, Frank, about suggesting Joe should retire when you did your interviews on Saturday.
That's his choice. You know, the criticism I got was I was giving him up. People don't listen. They don't listen to what I said. I know what I said. So they need to go back and listen rather than just grab something out of the air and interpret it to something it wasn't even. How on earth they can interpret what I said into some of the criticism. I don't understand. Is it named Savannah Marshall? That promoters giving him up. And where did she get that from? I don't understand where that comes from. I find that very strange she should say something like that. But anyway, I can't be responsible for what they say. I can only be responsible for what I do.
In hindsight, maybe should you have taken an interim fight because of his awkwardness and just how tough a competitor he is?
Yeah, maybe just like an easier fight and just bide my time until I get my shot. That would have been maybe better, but you know.
You proved tonight in a huge statement that you can take massive punches all night from elite fighters in the division and keep going and keep resilient. It was a huge statement. Do you know what a statement it was tonight?
Yeah, I'll have to watch it back, but I'm the juggernaut and that's how I get on. I try and avoid shots and that. I'm learning what I can from Salas and trying to implement the stuff that I've been doing in the gym. And thanks for Steve as well.
Yeah, Juggernaut, Granite, Chin Joe, you know what I mean? Yeah, Joe, just take them and keep coming. And TalkSport fed this guy up on that, and other media outlets have fed him up on that. And although he gave credence to Salas trying to teach him the finer arts of defense, you can see it's not really something Joe believes in. He doesn't really believe in it. This is the man who said that Usyk's punches felt like slaps. And maybe they did. Maybe they did feel like slaps. But there's still slaps you should try and avoid, because bad habits are hard to break. And there's still slaps that outpointed you when you were both amateurs. You won't hear Usyk bragging about anyone who he sparred or fought. Their punches felt like slaps. You won't hear him say that because he has respect for defense. People who brag like Joe about punches feel like slaps, they don't have respect for defense until they get knocked out, perhaps. You know, this was after the Joe Parker fight where Gareth Davis is talking to him. Granite Chin Joe, go Joe. And then after the first ZHANG fight, they're telling him you need to move your head. Joe's muscle memory is like, he's got to move his head. Isn't he the juggernaut? He doesn't need to move his head. He's the juggernaut. The juggernaut just walked through punches. And the 5-month turnaround he had to fix this defect and fight ZHANG again, he was a beaten man. But at 38, he felt pressure to take the fight in case Frank shelved him and he didn't get another chance to be a voluntary or a title challenger. And he was probably right in a way, because Frank was talking about maybe he should consider retirement after the second fight. Joe was also talking shit about AJ had a weak chin, meaning he has a great chin.
Sometimes Joshua's chin can be a bit suspect.
So he bought into a lot of the propaganda that eventually brought his downfall on Saturday. I'm betting you any money in the first fight he didn't think ZHANG could hurt him. By the time the second fight came around, he had to change his whole philosophy about who he is as a fighter and what identifies him as the juggernaut and everything. And it was a little too much for him to take on in too little time.
Look at all the media around Conor Benn and how long this has gone on for, and everyone's opinion about it, and they don't want to listen to the fact that he was cleared, his suspension was lifted, he went down the route that people asked him to with the NADP, and he was cleared.
You know, just on that, when you keep saying they don't know anything about it, will they ever get to find out the full ins and outs, what reason was given, what it was? Because that's what people are demanding.
Like, I'm going to give you an example, like a criminal case, right? So I go to court, get done for something, and then I get off it, right? It's never public. Like, why do I have to explain to everyone? I've gone down the route with the people who are specialists within these fields, and I've been cleared. Why should everyone see all the details of something that they don't actually understand? Why does everyone feel entitled to be, oh, I need to see this report? What's it got to do with you? You're a builder. I don't get it.
I made a hangout discussing the same thing. Like, people wanted to see the dossier, they wanted to see this and that. And it's a social media thing. It's an internet state of mind where the estimation of your self-importance is overinflated and perhaps a little out of control. Now you think you're part of the process. You need to see the dossier, you need to see the reports from the National Anti-Doping Panel. Would you really understand what you're reading, and what would you do with the findings? Can you ban Conor, or can you exonerate him? What is it you can do with it that the WBC, that UCAD, that the National Anti-Doping Panel or VADA can't? What is it you can do that they can't? Then you got the working class, the insecure working class guilt trip. Well, you know, builders buy tickets for Conor Benn fights, maybe we won't buy tickets. I mean, first thing first, let's deal with how much of you got fake outrage that aren't actually builders. You're hanging on to every thread of life to be outraged. That's really desperate. Grown men offended, not going to buy boxing tickets no more because of that. I tell you what, I don't give a fuck about this case no more. I'll talk about it when I want to talk about it, but I don't give a fuck, yeah? If Conor Benn wants to fight, he'll fight in America, in Britain, with or without Eddie Hearn, with or without your permission. And I'm already hearing the predictable beats is protecting Conor Benn. The same Conor Benn who I wanted Chris Eubank to beat. I've actually changed my opinion. I want Conor Benn to beat Eubank now. But this ain't about Benn. The board can suspend him for life. What does it matter to me? I'll see Benn fight. He'll fight somewhere else and I'll see him fight. I like watching Benn. And that's my decision. I want to see Benn come back. You're saying he didn't clear his name. He didn't clear. Billy Joe Saunders hasn't cleared his name with VADA. He still went back to America and fought. A few years later, after he was popped, the board let him fight over here. They didn't say, well, you need to clear up your situation with VADA in America before you can fight over here. They didn't do that. And it's the same doping agency where Conor's got the alleged violation as Billy did. And this is why you as a member of the public can't get involved. Your inconsistencies, because you're not in the trade, you can't get involved. I mean, the likes of TalkSport, all they've got to do is cover sport. They don't do the research. They're inconsistent. This is why we can't have no more of you indulging in dossiers and reports. Seriously. I know you feel that, yo, I'm entitled. I know you got that entitlement thing. But my man, you need to be reined in for your own good. And before you say that UCAD and VADA have different policies on the substance Billy got popped for, maybe so. But did you know that UCAD tests a significantly less amount of substances than VADA? Do you know that? Tyson Fury didn't clear his name. He had elevated levels of nandrolone. He didn't clear his name.
The anti-doping rule violations based on the reported presence of elevated levels of nandrolone are upheld, and both Huey and Tyson Fury will receive a 2-year ban.
There's no way you could prove you're innocent once your name goes in the system. Adverse finding, guilty or what. There's always going to be doubt from the fans and media. That's that. All these people banging about, prove your innocence. You can't prove your fucking innocence once you get in the system. You have to reach a resolution, a compromise to get back in the ring. If 100,000 of you get the dossier, get the National Anti-Doping Panel reports of what's going on, you're all going to come up with different theories of what you've just read and add to the confusion. That's all you can do. Frank Smith is right. If you work on the building site, you have no business asking about dossiers and reports about PEDs. If you sweep the street, same thing. You work in McDonald's, same thing. If you work on the stock market, or if you're a professor, again, that's more middle class. You still have no business asking about PED documents. That's the point he was making, okay? Let's not blow out of proportion. You know, all these boxing fans who don't want to see Conor Benn fight, I bet you any money they watch Shakur Stevenson versus Oscar Valdez, and Oscar Valdez against the Brazilian. He tested positive for a weight loss vitamin and was banned by VADA. The WBC didn't strip him of his belt. He was allowed to fight in the Pascal Yaqui Tribe Athletic Commission. They allowed him to fight. He hasn't served one bit of ban. And if you're either watching Oscar Valdez or Top Rank cards, without questioning it, and you keep banging on about Matchroom and Eddie and Oscar, you're a hypocrite. You're a hypocrite. Oscar Valdez was in a world title fight just the other week and got beaten by Navarrete. I wouldn't mind seeing EUBANK and BENN, and if they can make that fight, I'll pay my pay-per-view to watch it. It's not a problem. EUBANK was going to fight BENN regardless if he got popped, because they took their own independent people out, EUBANK and the Sauerlands, and they found that BENN only had minor trace amounts, and they were going to go ahead with the fight. The British Boxing Board of Control were going to let the fight go ahead as well until the mole went to the Daily Mail. So you can be as outraged as you want. You could prey on the event's downfall while you're watching other fighters who weren't cleared in your hypocrisy, thinking you're saying something. But look, I want to see it, and even if there's only 5 more of us who want to see it, if they're willing to put it on at a loss, I'll watch. If not, fair enough. But if you don't think moaning and whinging about Conor Benn for over a year and 6 months is a bit over the top, there's something wrong with you. Like a lot of people saying, oh, well, if his jurisdiction they cleared him on, that's not good enough. That proves he hasn't proved he's innocent. According to Frank Smith and Eddie Hearn, he wasn't cleared on jurisdiction. He was cleared on what evidence they provided satisfied them that he's good to go, he's good to fight. That's not enough for you. If you want to work for VADA or UCAD, you've got to do the training. You've got to start dog's body level to technician and whatever position comes higher than that. But all this armchair CSI shit, I need to see the dossier and the report and check it myself, just looks dumb right now.
Changes, everything revolves around changes. Used to be friends, now we strangers. Used to call it love, now it's hate. We so hateful. Take for granted every single thing. Used to be grateful. Gratitude turned into an attitude. Even though I did way more than I had to do, still I'm never mad at you. You was just infatuated. You was like a dime and a half, had me captivated. Told me that you need your cell phone plan activated. I just turned it on. Said you would never have to pay it. That's how it went down. Soon after that, had you pinned down. How is it I'm the one you resent now? Fuck it, changes, always creep up. I was making money with my feet up, chopping white rock down, cooking in the lab like a chemist. I knew the racket well like tennis. Niggas I was friends with, mostly either dead or doing letters in the state pen. That type of hardship could either break men or make men. It made me, not saying that it saved me. All I'm telling you is that it gave me a new perspective, motivation, made me get focused. The underlying reason for this opus, I know it's changes gonna happen. Even if you scared, it don't matter, get prepared. Most of the things I feared were things that I ain't know about. And things I used to worship, I found that I could go without. If it don't apply, let it fly, nigga, throw it out. But if I struck a nerve, there's some shit that you should know about. Economies are changing, philosophies are changing. Levels of disasters and atrocities changing. The climate is changing. Soldiers out on mission, their assignment is changing. Changes, friends become strangers. Areas that used to be safe is now dangerous. Playgrounds are pitiful, they try to make jail seem hospitable. Although you still in hell, you might forget it though.